NASA wasn't created, what would happen to our universe?
If NASA weren't around,
Yes.
what would happen to our universe? Well, I can tell you this. If NASA weren't here, we would know a lot less about the universe. And we would be intellectually impoverished by that fact. Because I enjoy knowing where we are, where we came from, and where we're going. And those questions are answered from space. To know how Earth got here, how the sun got here, what the future of Earth will be, what the future of our sun will be. Will we need to leave Earth and find another planet? All of that comes to us from the discoveries of a space program. Much of those discoveries have come from NASA. So it's not that the universe would be different if NASA never existed. It's that we would be different in a way that I don't even want to think about.
So we wouldn't know a single thing about the universe.
Yeah, we wouldn't know a single thing about the universe. We'd just be rummaging on Earth's surface thinking that our solutions to all our problems come from looking down rather than from looking up. Thank you. Nice to see you again. Okay. Let's do a high five. You got it. Okay.
This is a question about intelligent design. I don't believe in it, but don't you think there's some force, like a Gaia force in the universe that makes the different shapes of the galaxies, elliptical, etc., instead of just chaotic forms? Something going on.
She suspects that there might be something going on in the universe because the level of, I'm paraphrasing, the level of order that you see with the beautiful spiral galaxies and elliptical, there's shapes that look like something is going on there. Some larger sort of cosmic force. And what you must not have seen the galaxies that have collided and look like two train wrecks. You must not have seen those. Or the class of galaxy we call irregular galaxies that have no shape that you would point to. So you are pre-editing what you are pre-selecting things and say, oh, look, there's some interesting force going on there, when the rest of the universe is sitting there raggedy and you're not commenting on that. So what I'm saying is, the moment you think something's beautiful and better, just take another look. I remember I was there, we were coming over a bridge with a friend and he saw the sunset and the radiant rays and he said, oh, it's beautiful. God's talking to me. That's God. And I said, because it's beautiful? Is that why you say that? And he said, yeah, it's just, and I said, well, do you think about God when you get a close-up view of the underbelly of a tarantula? Are you thinking, oh, beautiful? No, you're not, right? But it's in the same universe. So if you're selective about the list you draw, then the universe can look like any philosophy you want it to look like. But once you take it all in, you realize that the universe wants to kill us. 99% of all the species that have ever lived are now extinct. Earth is not some cradle for life. It is a place that wants to kill us. Viruses, asteroids, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes. And so we're running away from these things, and we find a little place that we think is safe, then the flood comes. And then, okay, now we finally got a place, now the temperature drops, we gotta put on clothing and get heat, and isn't Earth so beautiful for us? It's like, no. So I would just be cautious about that. I understand the urge, but I understand, and on top of that, there are forces that make things round in the universe. In fact, I invite you, I didn't make it to this book. As much as I liked the essay, it actually didn't make the cut to this. I wrote an essay called On Being Round. And I talk about spiral galaxies and elliptical galaxies in it. So you just Google Tyson on being round, it'll take you right there. There's a whole conversation of why things are round in the universe. And yes, it is a force, but it's not some mysterious Gaia thing we don't understand. We understand it. It is real, and we can calculate it.
But there are certain laws of physics that the universe follows.
I would I would rather reword that statement to say there are laws of physics that describe the universe, because the universe could care less about what we think of it. The universe is not obeying our laws of physics. So, but yes, that's correct. There are laws of physics. So there are people who say that the laws of physics is the expression of God. And if you want to say that, nothing I can, fine. In fact, that's very close to Spinoza's God. Spinoza's God was whatever you find to be the order of the universe, that is the expression of God. And that's a very different God from the God who's listening to prayers and that sort of thing, or, or who puts dinosaurs on arks. These are different kinds of gods, okay? And so that would be closer to Spinoza's God. But be cautious there, because in the days when no one understood what was going on in the heavens, that was used as evidence that it was the handiwork of God, because why would you ever understand God, what God did? The fact that you didn't understand it was the citation of God at work. So now to say, we do understand it, there are laws, and also claim that that is the handiwork of God, that is riding both sides of that horse. And so I don't have a problem with it, but one needs to be aware of this philosophical trend, where God is what you don't know, and God is what you do know, so God is everything. And if that, then I'd ask, is fine, but is that going to help me make my next scientific discovery? If not, I'm going to put it over here and bring in the books that will. So you're worried that you will die before aliens come visit you. Okay, there are hallucinogenic drugs that can solve that problem. And your brain won't know the difference. So here's the thing. If you want to communicate with intelligent aliens across the gaps of space, you would use things that move at the speed of light. Radio waves have good sort of penetration properties of interstellar gas clouds and this sort of thing. All right, so now let's find a planet and send a radio signal. Well, that radio signal is going to have to arrive there at a time where they have not only intelligence, but technology. Suppose some other civilization was sending us radio waves and it arrived 200 years ago. Presumably, we would have counted ourselves among the ranks of intelligent creatures in the universe at that time, but we would have had no capacity to receive radio waves because radio waves weren't discovered yet. And so, in fact, if you want to communicate with a civilization, it has to be right in the slice of time where the life on that planet achieved complexity and intelligence and technology. And maybe technology is not a forever thing. Maybe technology escalates to the point where it becomes so dangerous that they render themselves extinct. So perhaps there's only a narrow window over which you could actually have a radio wave conversation with aliens. So I think the only hope, really, is that we get visited by highly intelligent aliens that figured out a way to cross the gaps of space-time, but thereby not being limited by the speed of light as a speed limit of the universe. As we say, speed of light is not just a good idea, it's the law. But if you warp space-time, you can cheat that, as they do in Star Trek with their warp drives and things. So if they would visit us. Now, you were depressed before. You don't know depression until what I'm about to tell you. So now imagine if they visit us in a spacecraft. What are we doing now? In the United States, we don't even have a spacecraft to launch our own astronauts. We're hitching a ride we're buying seats on the Russian for tens of millions of dollars, okay? And what will that do? It will go into low Earth orbit where we will boldly go where hundreds have gone before, all right? That is the state of human space exploration at this moment. Now aliens come from the gaps of space and they land. Okay. I have two hypotheses. Three. One of them is they have already landed, but they accidentally arrived during Comic-Con. And no one could distinguish them from any other costumes that were being worn. And then they left because no one cared that they came. So that's It's a remote possibility, but I'm allowing that in the probability of this. All right. So another possibility is that they took a good look at us and concluded there's no sign of intelligent life on Earth, not worthy of their attention. A third possibility, there may be more, but these are the three that I carry with me, is that they are so much smarter than we are. And by the way, what would that take? Not much. But what's the next closest animal to humans in intelligence? Chimpanzees, chimps. And what's the DNA difference? 2% tops? Yet, what's the most they can do? They can stack boxes and reach a banana? Okay, maybe they'll put up an umbrella, rudimentary sign language, maybe. Our toddlers do that. Our toddlers. So here's only a 2% difference in DNA, and the chimp is stacking boxes, but we have poetry and music and the Hubble telescope. So our hubris ends up saying, what a difference that 2% makes. What a difference that makes. Maybe that difference is just as small as the 2%. Maybe the difference between the Hubble telescope and stacking boxes is as small as the 2% indicates. Because now consider some other species, 2% beyond us, just as we are 2% beyond the chimp. What would we look like to them? They would roll the smartest human Stephen Hawking, roll him forward and say, this one is slightly smarter than the rest because he can do astrophysics calculations in his head like little Timmy over here who just came back from preschool. Alien Timmy. Oh, look, you just composed your 12th sonnet. That's beautiful. Oh, you just re-derived the fundamental principles of calculus. Let's put it on the refrigerator door. Yes, that's what their toddlers would be doing because our toddlers do what the smartest chimps do. If aliens came and they had only that much more intelligence than us, the gap that is between us and chimps, and we have DNA in common, if they were only that, they could enslave the entire Earth and we wouldn't even know it. Maybe that has already happened. And we are living our lives as though we are expressing the free will of the human species, yet we are nothing more than an ant farm on their shelf. So we are their entertainment, not even worthy of investigation beyond what we look like in their terrarium. Things to different people. Some people say it means you pray every day. Some people said you're sure you're going to heaven or not. So I was born Catholic, raised that way until age 11 or so. And can I just sign it? I'm just going to sign now and then as I started learning about the universe, what I was being taught became less and less relevant to anything I cared about. And now what's interesting is that 40% of scientists in America are religious as measured by the following, because don't measure whether you go to church every week, because some people go to church just for the social scene or for the cupcakes. You want to ask a question where it's meaningful when someone says they're religious. So the question you ask is, do you pray to a personal God who would then intervene with life and society? And if you do that, you're religious. That's a clean way to do that. 40% of American scientists answer yes to that question. That includes physicists, astrophysicists. There's a range among them. Engineers and mathematicians are a little higher. They're up around 60%. Astrophysicists, physicists, biologists are lower. They're down around 25, but it averages 40. Now, here's the difference. Those who are productive scientists and answer yes to that question do not go to the Bible as a source of their science. The Bible is just another part of their life. It's their spiritual part of their life. And they do their science in their science books. You get into problems when people try to get science out of the Bible and then influence the science curriculum in a science classroom.
Right.
That is a whole other thing.
Like saying that the Earth is only 1,000
Exactly, 6,000 years old. That's a whole other thing happening in America right now that would undermine the science curriculum. By the way, science and religion have been coexistent forever.
Yeah.
The difference is there's no tradition of scientists knocking down the Sunday school door, telling the preacher what to teach. That's never happened. But you find people today, religious fundamentalists typically, trying to knock down the science classroom, trying to tell the science teacher what to teach. And I cry foul when that happens. We've had this happy coexistence forever. And so those who are religious are, those aren't the ones saying the Earth is 6,000 years old. They're,
So you're not moving to Kansas.
no, or if I do, I gotta.
We gotta go. No more
There you go.
questions.
Okay, I'm gonna run.
Is graviton discovered yet?
Is what? Is what?
Graviton?
No, still not discovered. Still not discovered. The last, there's a good book on that called Einstein's Unfinished Symphony.
Okay.
It's all about the search for gravity waves and graviton.
Thank you so much.
Did I sign that yet?
Yeah, you
I get it. Okay,
Thanks.
good. I can walk. I have a special pen for this. All right. Good.
This is a quote. In the Trump era, says celebrity physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, who adds that this is the most important thing he's ever said, people, quote, have lost the ability to judge what is true and what is not.
Okay, so that sentence, that was from a video that was posted just before the Science March. That sentence did not include reference to Trump at all. That was added in that editorial. I just said, we live in a time where people have lost the ability to judge what is true and what is not. And if you want to call the pre-election era part of a Trump era, okay. But if you're looking at something on the internet and you think it's true and do not have the capacity to judge whether it's not true, that is another element, that is another ingredient in the recipe for disaster. So Trump is a manifestation, the Trump era, where what is true and what is not and where almost that distinction is not made, where that has risen to high heights. I would claim those seeds were germinating long before. And it has to do with what people think is true after they read it on the internet. Our susceptibility to this. And here's something else. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, if anyone remembers what a broken record is, that in K through 12, somewhere in there, rather than pouring knowledge into people's heads and declaring them to be educated for having done so, somewhere in there we need to train people how to think, how to analyze, how to interpret, how to be skeptical of information, and then how to recognize when sufficient data has been put forth to turn something that you might be skeptical about into something that is a newly established objective truth. That is not taught in the schools. This should be a class just on what science is and how and why it works. And that would transcend the physics class, the chemistry class, the biology class, the geology class, the general science class. This would be its own course. So that when you are college educated, and some institution has declared you graduated and a learned member of society, if you turn around and say, I choose not to believe this emergent scientific consensus, no, you don't have that option. It's not how objectively established scientific truths are determined. It is true whether or not you believe in it. And in retrospect, you think maybe that's what you should base legislation on. Not something you want to be true or feel should be true, or something that you don't allow to be true because your religion prevents it or because your political philosophy prevents it. You don't have that option if it's an objectively established truth. And like I said earlier, that is the entire point of the scientific enterprise.
Congress is considering pulling the plug on the James Webb Space Telescope, which is the successor.
Don't get me started.
No, I want to get you started. This is the successor to the Hubble, and they say it can peer into the universe and maybe see the moment when the universe was born. I don't even know how that happens. But it costs $6.8 billion.
Well, first of all, let's clarify what the NASA budget is. The bank bailout, that sum of money
could reach Venus.
That sum of money is greater than the entire 50-year running budget of NASA.
Wow.
And so when someone says we don't have enough money for this space probe, I'm asking, no, it's not that you don't have enough money. It's that the distribution of money that you're spending is warped in some way, that you are removing the only thing that gives people something to dream about tomorrow. You remember the 60s? You remember the 60s and 70s? You didn't have to go more than a week before there's an article in Life magazine, the home of tomorrow, the city of tomorrow, transportation of tomorrow. All that ended in the 1970s. After we stopped going to the moon, it all ended. We stopped dreaming. And so I worry that decisions that Congress makes doesn't factor in the consequences of those decisions on tomorrow. Tomorrow's gone.
You know what?
They're playing for tomorrow, metaphoric tomorrow, not the literal tomorrow. They're playing for the quarterly report. They're playing for the next election cycle. And that is mortgaging the actual future of this nation. The rest of the world is going to pass us by.
Do you give people who make this case that that was the beginning and that there had to be something that provoked the beginning, do you give them an A at least for trying to reconcile faith and reason?
I don't think they're reconcilable.
What do you mean?
Well, so let me say that differently. All efforts that have been invested by brilliant people of the past have failed at that exercise. They just fail. And so the track record is so poor that going forward I have essentially zero confidence, near zero confidence that there will be fruitful things to emerge from the effort to reconcile them. So, for example, if you knew nothing about science and you read, say, the Bible, the Old Testament, which in Genesis is an account of nature. That's what that is. And I said to you, give me your description of the natural world based only on this. You would say the world was created in 6 days and that stars are just little points of light, much lesser than the sun. And in fact, they can fall out of the sky, right? Because that's what happens during the Revelation. One of the signs that the second coming is that the stars will fall out of the sky and land on Earth. To even write that means you don't know what those things are. You have no concept of what the actual universe is. So everybody who tried to make proclamations about the physical universe based on Bible passages got the wrong answer. So what happened was, when science discovers things and you want to stay religious, or you want to continue to believe that the Bible is unerring, what you would do is, you would say, well, let me go back to the Bible and reinterpret it. Then you'd say things like, oh, they didn't really mean that literally, they meant that figuratively. So this whole sort of reinterpretation of how figurative the poetic passages of the Bible are came after science showed that this is not how things unfolded. And so the educated religious people are perfectly fine with that. It's the fundamentalists who want to say that the Bible is the literal truth of God, and want to see the Bible as a science textbook, who are knocking on the science doors of the schools trying to put that content in the science. Enlightened religious people are not behaving that way. They're saying, yes, science is cool, we're good with that, and use the Bible to get your spiritual enlightenment and your emotional fulfillment.
I read a book, Consolation of Philosophy. The main guy, Boethius, is condemned to death. He has everything taken from him. All he has is his reason and his sense of self. Not even that. But he attempts to console himself to this execution by reasoning that the world has order, that there is something that keeps things together. And he uses his reason to try and get to the root of why he should be at peace at death. The problem is, his source of origin is a belief in God. What would you do?
Well, I don't know if I fully understand the question. I do know that if he's about to be executed...
How about you are about to be executed?
Oh, I'm about to be executed.
You have nothing except your knowledge and your knowledge of science, your experience.
I would request that my body, in death, be buried, not cremated, so that the energy content contained within it gets returned to the earth so that flora and fauna can dine upon it, just as I have dined upon flora and fauna throughout my life. There's no tablet in the sky that said it had to be simple to end up being complex. It's just a remarkable fact about the universe. So why not celebrate it? The fact that pi, right?
Let's say the numbers together. 3.1415926.
Well, we got a few
That's pretty good. There's a nerd fest.
We got a geek thing going on over there.
Not bad, not bad.
The fact that you take a circle of any size, a circle the size of the universe itself, and divide it by its own radius, and you get that number, that's beautiful. I have to pause, and I get misty thinking of this. I'm sorry, that's just another one, that the atoms and molecules in your body are traceable to the crucibles in the centers of stars that manufactured these elements over its lifespan, when unstable, on death, exploding its enriched guts across the galaxy, scattering it into gas clouds that would ultimately collapse and make a star and have the right ingredients to make planets and people. Which means we are part of this universe. As I've said many times, and this goes back, not only are we in the universe is in us. That is a profound concept. And I think it's the greatest gift that astrophysics gave culture in the 20th century.
There's a few people on the lines are asking, do you believe in God?
I'm not convinced. If here's the thing. If every time I talk about God with someone who's a believer, God is all powerful and all knowing and all good, right? The good is a big part of this. Mm-hmm. And then I look at all the ways Earth wants to kill us.
Strangle us.
You know, a tsunami takes out 250,000 people, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, floods. And I add all of that up. Either the God is not all powerful or is not all good. But it can't really be both, given all the ways the universe wants to kill us. And if Earth is not finished killing you, there's the asteroid that could come in.
Right.
An asteroid rendered 70% of all life forms extinct. Back in the famous one in 65 million years ago that took out the dinosaurs. So there's so many ways to die, not at the hands of someone else who has free will, that I don't know what is the nature of the God that you're talking about.
I gotta try to use your logic back at you, but don't we define what is good and what is bad? So we see a tsunami wipe out a whole bunch of people, and we're as human beings going, wow, that's bad, because we define what bad is. Maybe in God's brain, eyes, whatever the hell, that's not bad.
Well, but except you defined what God is.
Oh boy!
Wow,
now you did it.
That's
so. Why do you have the power to define who and what God is,
right,
but not have the power to define what good is?
Yeah, my point is we just don't know it all. Not even close.
Oh, sure. So therefore, if you're going to say God actually is good, and 250,000 people dying from an earthquake and a tsunami and other natural disasters, right, and God presumably has control over that, and God is good, then we have to then say God works in mysterious ways, right?
There you go.
That's that. But people only say that when their understanding of God fails them.
When
right?
it's something bad.
No, when they can't understand it, they say, well, God works in mysterious ways. But somehow, in these other ways, you did understand him.
Right.
How are you saying, well, this is the handiwork of God? You're doing God's work. God wants you to do this. Somehow you know God's motives every other way. Mm-hmm. But when 250,000 people get wiped out, God works in mysterious ways. Mm-hmm. Why do you even claim to have access to God's mind in some contexts and not others?
Exactly.
Just admit you have no clue,
right,
and get on with life.